Hello and welcome to The Life You're Made For. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Pinney. Often our world feels reactive, confusing, and chaotic. On this show, we're going to slow down together. Take a breath, listen, and learn. We'll be joined in conversations with influential thinkers who will help us make new connections, understand our unique potential, check the beliefs we hold, and learn how to overcome unexpected challenges. I know that each and every one of us holds our own inner clarity, confidence, and courage, what I call 3C living and leading. So let's go after it together. I'm cheering you on. I am so excited today to have Kimberly Miller, an old friend now. I think it's several years, Kimberly, and we've been watching each other's career, and it's just so fun to have you on my show today.
Oh, thank you, Heather. It's just delightful to be back here on your podcast, and I'm just feeling more clear, confident, and courageous just talking to you.
My work here is done. Well, I want to introduce you to our audience. I first got to meet Kimberly, years ago now. She's been a part of the work that I've done to endorse some of my work and my book. And one of the things I loved about Kimberly is she took research and really applied it and infused her perspective on it. So I want to share a little of her bio. She starts her bio out with, I'm a follower of Jesus, a certified internal family systems therapist and co-author of Boundaries for Your Soul. She has a ministry called Leading Wholeheartedly, through which she teaches spirit-led self-leadership. She's a doctoral candidate at Fuller Theological Seminary. Congratulations. And with an emphasis on soul care. Been married for 15 years and has a 6-year-old daughter. Cute age. I love that age. So we're so excited to have you on the show today. And the reason I have brought Kimberly on, I'll just give a little context to my audience. I've always said, first of all, we all hold our clarity, confidence, courage within us. And it's about leadership is about really how we lead from within. And Kimberly is an expert on that internal system of who we are. And if we don't have clarity on internally who we are, it's going to show up externally in ways that we're not really probably excited about or proud about. And I think one of the things that I've learned from Kimberly's work is just some beautiful ways to manage my internal world so that I can show up as a coach, as a wife, as a mother, as a friend, in ways that I'm proud of and in ways that I feel like that is my true authentic self. And sometimes we join conversations or we start doing things and we're realizing, I don't feel really good about how I'm participating in this, but I don't know why. So that's kind of where I want us to start, is that idea of leadership starts from within. But Kimberly, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, sure, Heather. I love what you just said, because I once heard that therapy is about bringing clarity to your understanding of who you are and what's happening in your relationships. And so that focus on clarity is so important, and really understanding our own reactivity and how we get activated in different contexts just goes so far in helping us to be the leader that we want to be in all different kinds of contexts. So thank you for that. And you introduced me really well. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm a therapist in private practice in Southern California. And I think I realized how important it was to be able to understand yourself in order to show up in the way that you want to in the world and to be a healing person. So really my goal is to be a healing person, a healing presence in the world. I'm wounded, and I'm a wounded healer, to borrow a phrase from Henry Nouwen. And I want to journey alongside other people to help them also to understand themselves, to grow in their characters, so that they can engage thoughtfully and meaningfully in a way that is displaying spirit-led self-leadership. So leadership of their own selves, guided by the Spirit of God in all different kinds of contexts: home, professional, environment, social surroundings. And it's very difficult to do these days because there's just so much that can activate us, right?
Yes.
Being in the world, there's so much that is triggering. And every day we need to be working on our characters. So that whatever we're engaged in, that we show up in a way that's compassionate and that is seeking understanding and with a heart of humility.
Yes. Well, that's why I wanted to bring you on. And in the work I do too, I believe in the whole person, mind, body, heart, spirit. And my faith is important to me. I do infuse it. And a lot of people that I work with infuse their faith. And so I love that you've taken this work, and you could probably describe it better than I can, but I think it's Richard Schultz. Is that right? Who started the work in psychiatry or psychology?
Richard Schwartz, he started a therapy method called internal family systems therapy. And sometimes when people hear that, they think, oh, it's family systems. I'm familiar with that, but actually he took family systems therapy and he applied it to your own inner world. And
Mm,
you know what? We actually have these parts of ourselves that relate to each other, like members of a family.
mm,
And just like, a brother and sister can get polarized or competitive, parts of us can get polarized within us and become in conflict with one another. And like for example, I can have a very like strict manager part of me, but I can also have kind of a passive, a shy part of me. And these parts can be in conflict or in competition with one another and vying for the leadership. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Inside Out,
yes.
but like there's different parts of Riley, the main character, and they're sort of vying for control over the motherboard,
Yeah.
trying to get control and be the one that is speaking and in any given context. And the goal is that we have enough distance from these parts, which we call internal differentiation or unblending, which is boundaries concept, getting some space from those parts that can jump in and try to control us so that we can get to know them, get to know their good intentions, and lead them, develop leadership, which is where the self-leadership concept comes in. And so that all the parts can cooperate with all their good intentions for a common purpose, which is helping you to be the person that you really want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think when I came across your work years ago, I was dealing with something that I could feel was limiting me, but I couldn't name it. And my business was growing, my work was growing. I'd started my company, but it was almost like I'd hit a ceiling where I wasn't quite sure how to step out, but I could feel myself wanting, probably more nervous about saying the wrong thing, messing up, doing it, getting it off. And I felt like I'm a middle-aged woman. What is wrong with me? But it felt that kind of youngness. And I realized it was some of my parts kind of coming up saying, yeah, you did this when you were 8 and it backfired on you. Don't do this again at 45 or 52, So I was hearing some of these kind of messages in there. And I think when you gave me context for it, I was like, oh, that was just my firefighter or my manager trying to protect me. And I realized I don't need that anymore. So it was almost like learning how to have a self-talk with myself. And then it moved more into the work that I do with talking about belief systems. There's certain beliefs that we hold. I'd like us to kind of pivot over to that. And I want to say, what are some beliefs that you have held that you realized I've outgrown this? This is not what I want to keep thinking about. This is not who I truly am today. Something feels off of who I am as an adult woman today. And maybe what I'm feeling internally doesn't feel like it fits the picture.
Oh, Heather, I really want to say I love how you just said I've outgrown this, because that is a really, really helpful concept, I think. Just the idea of outgrowing negative habits or, vices in the past. It can be so easy to be critical of ourselves and say, oh, I have this terrible problem. But if you realize I'm growing and I'm outgrowing this problem, that's a growth mindset. And it's very positive and forward thinking, and it's non-pathologizing. So I appreciate that so much. And
Oh, good.
yes, the negative beliefs that we carry can really weigh us down. I actually just read a study about how self-criticism is the number one predictor of compassion fatigue in the helping professions.
Wow.
And yes. So being critical of ourselves and negative inner talk, talking to ourselves in a critical way will lead to burnout if we don't get a handle on it. Don't control it. So this was a scientific research project that showed this. And so this is not, just an unimportant conversation on the side that you can get to if you want to. This is essential work that we talk about and look into and really work on. How are we relating to ourselves? Are we extending compassion? And it's not just selfish. It's not selfish to do that. It is actually, it does help us to do that. It's self-interest rightly understood, as Alexis de Tocqueville said, of being charitable. It's actually better for other people when we look at our self-talk. So, you know, an example for me is I've felt like I've had a part that has felt that I needed to be, harsh in order to get my point across. That's a belief that I've held that has not served me well. And I'm learning to outgrow that and instead to just be assertive. And I've had a part that can shut down if I feel like it's too scary to talk. Had to outgrow that and encourage that part to speak up a little bit. Well, just the idea that I might be not heard if I don't raise my voice. That's a negative belief that I've been outgrowing, and that my voice isn't important. That's another voice that I've been outgrowing and learning to be assertive. There's a helpful concept of a spectrum of assertiveness, and on the one side there's being aggressive, and on the other side is being passive. And our goal is to be assertive and to communicate the truth with love. So really paying attention to what are those beliefs that parts of me are carrying that are holding me back and keeping me from being assertive in a compassionate way is an important daily practice.
Well, I love that. One of the phrases that really stuck out to me when you were talking was how we relate to ourselves. And you're right. I think that when my world started growing, it was almost like I put the pressure on myself and I began to be kind of unkind, like, you better not blow this. There's a lot more people looking at you now and depending on you. And I could feel like, what is wrong with me? Like, it felt so off. And I realized I knew I needed to grow that. And one of the pictures I now have in my head, and I've had this for years, and a lot of it is thanks to the work that you've done, is I just picture these little, my team inside of me.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, patting them on the head. Hey, it's going to be okay. I don't need that anymore, but actually I do need your support on this. You need us to move forward in this. And, you want me to just here, I'll put you on my hip and we're going to just go ahead and get up on that stage and speak together and it's all going to be okay. You don't have to be nervous for me. That was then, this is now. And so there's this kindness that I started really learning how to do, even passing in the mirror, looking at her going, I'm so proud of you. You're working so hard today. Sometimes my hair will just be like everywhere. I have no makeup on. I'm like, well, look at you go, girl. Look at you. You've just went and worked out and you just took care of yourself. And now you're going to go step into the world today, And that tendency was really being hard on myself. You're not measuring up and pull it together and you've got to work harder. There was so much of that inner talk that was hitting me.
Those lies, right?
Yeah.
It's just not true. We're all on a journey and you're growing and you're showing up in the way that you can today. And yet there are just all these lies in our heads, both from ourselves, from the world, and from the enemy of our souls. The enemy that just speaks lies to us. And it's just important to, there's a great book by John Mark Comer, Live No Lies. Really encourage people to read that one, just about really paying attention to what are those lies. And I know one that I've had to fight against is the idea that like I'm not doing enough in the world, or that I'm not being productive enough. That I'm not enough. And it's just amazing how these messages just try to. They're there and we have to address them and fight against them and say, no, I am who God made me to be. And I'm doing what I feel the Holy Spirit is leading me to do. And that is enough because I'm not God. I'm made in God's image, but it's God's responsibility to take care of the whole world. It's my responsibility to do whatever he's calling me to do in this moment right now. So that's just an example of me needing to talk to that young part of myself. And I so appreciate that you brought up how parts of us can be young. And when you were talking, I was almost getting this image of like a little young Heather, like a part of you with when you were maybe, 5 or 6 or so. And that's a really helpful concept, is to think of your parts as children,
Mm,
because they often are younger,
mm,
and they get stuck in the past because of trauma.
yeah.
And psychologists have really identified this, that when we have these parts of us that get stuck, and then even though you're the biological age that you are, you have
Mm,
parts of you that are really living in the past, and you have to bring them up to speed, develop a relationship with them, and update them about who you are now.
yeah.
And when like I had an encounter recently. I was in a different city, and I was visiting an uncle that I really love, but I haven't seen in a long time. And we had a really lovely lunch. And then I was leaving and driving to the airport by myself. And I just started weeping. And I just started feeling like, oh no, what if I never see him again? And I was feeling so
Mm,
grief. And so I didn't know where all that emotion was coming from. And so I have a wonderful therapist, and I brought that up with her. And she said, she said, um, it sounds like that might be a young part of you that showed up there.
mm,
And she said, what is that young part of you saying?
mm,
And I felt like that young part of me was just saying, well, what if I never get to see him again?
mm,
And it reminded me of when I had to leave the city where he lived when I was young. My mother and my family moved away from where he lived. And that young part of me was carrying that grief
mhm,
and been taken away from the proximity to my family. And there was a lot there, that I had to work through to really release some of the burden that part was carrying. And
mhm,
we can do, once we've identified the part that's kind of overreacting in a situation. Like
mhm.
we were just going to lunch, and I was just going to the airport, but all this emotion was coming up.
Yeah.
And when that happens, when you find yourself being really activated in a situation, maybe it's feeling overly criticized, maybe you're feeling judgmental of somebody, something's going on, feeling a lot of envy when there's no
Mhm,
reason to. It's really important to really get to know that part of yourself and connect with it, listen
mm,
to what it's saying, and then really help it to release that burden.
mm. I
Release that burden. Yeah, and there's some really good techniques for doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought that up because, I it when I started really recognizing that in myself and started just being kinder to myself, it's actually much easier than we realize. I
Mm.
spent more energy trying to get them to be quiet and leave me alone.
Mm.
And when I learned to just kind of give them all a hug, I still remember going up on, I was in the middle of a talk and there's probably about 350 people in the room. And I felt this wave of panic come over me. And it was an old belief that you don't know what you're saying. Why would anyone listen to you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that same part. You mentioned you saw me on Instagram just speaking at a conference. It was so funny. I had that same part, and I was having dinner with my coworker afterwards, and I said, I really felt like for most of that whole workshop that
Yeah.
everybody already knew what I was going to say, and that it was not at all of interest to them,
Yep.
and that I really had no business being there. There was no point of my being there. It
Yeah.
was that part. But then, as she validated and listened to me, and I worked through that part, then the second half of the whole dinner, I kept saying, people need to understand this information. They need to be equipped with these tools because they're so helpful to them. And then there was this other part of me that was like this manager part that was just like, let's go do this again, And right there, and we got the biggest kick out of that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I know you have that confident part too, right? That's
Oh,
just
yeah.
ready
Yeah.
to take on the world.
But
Um,
it's unnerving. It's unnerving when you're in the middle of a talk and everyone's looking at you, and I was so grateful for some of this inner work because I was like, oh, I literally just kind of
yeah.
smiled at the room. What was happening is I was picking up on a lot of their anxiety.
Ah,
And then I was getting nervous that I couldn't fix it for them. And then
yes.
I literally told myself, oh, you're not God. Like, you're not responsible for this. And what an erroneous belief that was, that somehow it's my job to fix things. That was part of my fear, or it's my job to get it right. And I'm like, no, it's just your job to show up and you get
Yeah.
to trust that you're being led and guided. And all of this happened in like a split second, but it shifted my whole talk because I could feel the fear and it was triggering fear that I had to perform. And
Right.
I realized, I don't have to do that.
Well, I think you just identified something that psychologists have observed, which is that when you unblend from a part, which you did by acknowledging it, understanding it, appreciating its good intentions, it's doing the work of taking on the fear of this
Mm-hmm.
audience, and and you kind of were holding it on the side. You kind of
Yeah.
showed me with your hands, like as if you were holding it, on your hip or something. This young part of you, and said, "You don't have to show up today." You're helping it to relax. Then spontaneously, your spirit-led self showed up.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not God. I don't have to worry about this.
Yep.
And that's because underneath our parts of our soul, we all have this
Mm-hmm.
core self, and every major religion has acknowledged this inner self. They have different names of it, but it's a kind of a sacred center within our soul. And the interesting thing about this psychology method, internal family systems therapy, is that it also acknowledges this core center.
Mm.
That's why it integrates really beautifully with spirituality,
Mm.
because it helps us to realize that we can get in touch with this core self if we unblend from the parts. We show up with more clarity and courage
Yep.
and confidence
Yeah.
if we can unblend from the parts. So that's really the key, and just that awareness, like, oh, that's a part of me. It's not all of who I am. That one little awareness can
Mm.
really go a long way to helping us to live more from that sacred center.
So well said. And you're right. It shows up, and I've studied so many different faiths and lines of thoughts and philosophy, and just they're all a common thread. Richard Rohr calls it the true self. And really, I think all of us, when we're honest with ourselves, we know that there's a true core self that sometimes is getting distracted or sabotaged or sideways. And it's really how we care for that as we mature and grow. And it reminds me of a really good example of a CEO who called me. And the funny thing is, because I've done my work, I can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Here she's this amazing, competent person who runs multi-million-dollar companies, and I hear a quiver in her voice. And I said, "Oh, that's just your little self. Just put her on your hip and get up there on stage. You got this." And that was all I said. And it was like life-changing for her, because I'm like, that's what I do. I go, "Oh, that's little H, little H." And I call her little H. I'm like, "Little H, we got this," And it hits me when I get up in front of a lot of people. In fact, that's where I have to really be conscious of it, because I get nervous that I'm going to fail someone or let them down, or I haven't earned the right to speak, or I'm going to lose my place and just freeze. These are all things. And being able to really shift my beliefs into saying, no, I'm here for a reason. I get to trust that. I get to trust myself, and I get to trust that I'm being led and guided. And my only job is to show up with my true self. So take care of all those little parts of me, and recognize that as I continue to trust that, my world will continue to grow and expand, which is what we all want. Mm-hmm. It's the little parts that keep our limiting beliefs and keeps our world really small.
Yeah.
And none of us want that. We want this big, large world, but we know something internally is kind of stopping us. And that's been huge for me, particularly as my world began to grow. I began to fear that I couldn't handle a larger growth world. And that made me sad for me. I was like, I wanted to be able to enjoy the growth. I don't want to have to be scared of it because I'm afraid that I'm not equipped to handle it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think there are a lot of people that let that belief that parts of them are carrying, that their work isn't good enough, so they're not ready to share, or for something like that. They let that control their whole system, their whole internal family system. Yep. And never end up showing up as they are, when really what people really want is just you. They just want a connection with you, and to get to know you as a person with all your all your flaws and all your tendencies. They just want that vulnerability and openness. Yeah. And actually, they don't want a perfect person to talk to, because then they can't relate to you.
I know. I love that you reminded me of that. I still need to be reminded of that, Kimberly, because in the work we do, sometimes that pressure of like, oh, I've got to have answers. That's not the way I want to show up. I want to say, well, I'm taking the journey. Then there's definitely some things I've learned along the way.
Right. Yeah.
But I want to show up and just meet you where you're at, and trust that we're going to figure this out. And you actually hold the clarity, confidence, courage within you, and you get to exercise it at will. My job is to respectfully come alongside and support that growing in you so that you feel confident about what it is that you're seeing and how you're responding to yourself and to the world you're living in.
Well, and I think a really good question to ask ourselves when we start feeling those feelings of like quivering, like you were saying, that the leader had when she was up in front of people, or if you start to get nervous in a conversation, or let's say you're about to have a difficult conversation and you start to get this protective part taking over you, and or you called it I heard you call it recently a helpful conversation.
Oh,
necessary conversation.
Yes, the needed necessary conversation.
That's not difficult. It's necessary, or even courageous conversation.
Yeah.
You can have these parts that take over. And a good question to ask ourselves in those moments when we start to feel activated in any way is, how am I feeling toward this part of me? Because the answer to that question will determine whether or not you're pushing it away or you are inviting it to come sit on your hip, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And give it a hug, and reassure it that everything's going to be okay, that you've got this. So,
yeah.
And I think there's something also, neurological that happens in our brains when we ask that question, that we move from our amygdala to our, I want to say our prefrontal cortex, but I think our heart is involved in some way.
Yeah.
There's my biopsychosocial spiritual model showing up there for you, that somehow something's happening in our brain and in our spirit, that when we ask ourselves, how am I feeling toward this young part of me? Everything shifts within, and all of a sudden we become aware, oh, wow, I have an inner critic. It's another part. And what are the good intentions of that inner critic, and how am I feeling toward that inner critic? Maybe I need to put that one on the other hip,
Yeah.
Give that part a hug too, because that has a good intention too, trying to keep me from, the effects of whatever that first part was going to have on me.
Yeah.
And just all parts are welcome. And it's also a helpful tool just to imagine like a table in front of you with all the different parts of your inner world sitting around the table, and they're all welcome. And as they feel welcome, they start to relax. And you can also, if you believe in Jesus, you can imagine Jesus sitting with the parts also and receiving his blessing, or a sacred presence, if that language feels more comfortable. Just imagine the holy sacred presence there, blessing all of these different parts of you. And you're ministering to your parts through your spirit-led self, and then creating this like little party going on inside. There's a party internally, and it's like a happy family.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a toxic, conflictual family.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. It makes me think of my sweet daughter. She's now 23, but she's a highly sensitive person. And from a young age, I had to teach her how to lean into something bigger than herself. And for her, it was Jesus. And so every night she would deal with this anxiety, and we'd be like, no, we're just going to lie down. We're going to meditate. We're going to relax, and you're going to go to your happy place. And for her, she decided it was with her dog and with Jesus up in the wildlands and nature. I always joke, I didn't even make the cut, Kimberly. I don't know what that says about me. I would just sit there, and then she would just thank her whole body, like, thank you, eyes, for working so hard today. It's time to relax. Thank you, ears, for hearing so well today. And we'd go from the tip of her head to the toes of her feet. Wow. And internally, she was listening she had that visual in her head, and her eyes were just closed and sweet. And then I would just gently pray over her, and we'd leave the room. We did this for probably 5 or 6 years. Every night, my husband and I were committed to this. And she was dealing with extreme anxiety. And I realized from a young age, and she had a very high IQ too, and I know that was kind of correlated with some of this, she was getting very triggered by all the intensities of our world. And I thought, I've got to teach her from a young age how to start self-regulating, how to care for herself. Because if not, all she's going to do is kind of white knuckle it through life. And I didn't want her to feel that. I wanted her to know, you're probably going to just need to do a little bit more, and it's okay. You have a hypersensitivity to this world. And then I realized, I do too.
A second. I do too.
I think she got this from me, where in our best moments, we're reading the room, and that's really what we're successful at. But in our worst moments, we're really distracted by it all. And then all of our internal stuff is just starting to react to it too. They're moving into protection mode. So as I've aged, I've learned to just say, everything's going to be okay. I'm managing my inner self. I'm managing the room that's full of anxiety or conflict or anger. It doesn't get to influence or affect me. It gets to be like I get to offer this peace.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from the internal space versus joining their fear because it's starting to trigger my fear.
Mm-hmm. That is just so beautiful what you did with your daughter all those years. I'm just so touched by that. And now I'm going to do that with my daughter. I can't wait.
Oh, good.
Yes, I love it. I'm especially interested in the role of the imagination and what you were doing with her because you asked her to picture somewhere peaceful.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. We started with draw it out. She was maybe 4 or 5 and she's dealing with extreme anxiety. So she drew it out and she drew a picture. So, and then that's what we put on her wall. But you're right. It moved into the right side of her brain, which is what I had studied as an educator.
Really? Because that's interesting because I'm actually doing my doctorate right now, focusing on the role of imagination in healing.
Yeah.
Because I'm so intrigued that so often it does take our right brain. You know, we do need to engage that imaginative faculty that God gave us when we are seeking inner healing. And there's so many beautiful ways to do that. One is, picture somewhere that you've been that really made you feel calm and peaceful, and picture yourself there. And then you can also picture a person that's comforting to be there with you. Picture, if you believe in Jesus, you could picture Jesus there with you. And what is he doing? What is he saying? What does he say about my feelings right now, or about the situation that I'm nervous about right now? And really develop that like listening ear for the Lord's voice because he speaks to us.
Yeah.
And, as a therapist, I can say certain things and I hope I'm helpful, but really I see my whole objective as facilitating a connection between the parts of my clients that are distressed and the good shepherd who will bring a sense of calm and peace that I can't bring as a human being. And all of us need to really, I should say it's helpful for all of us to develop that listening relationship with the Holy Spirit, and using our imaginations to do that is a great way.
Yeah.
A great way to hear him. Yeah. Yeah. Just love that.
Yeah. It's been life-changing for me. And if anyone's grown up in confusing religious messages, which I did as well, I had to find different names. Like my book, The Bracelet, I call it The Voice on the Wind. And I guess I want to give the audience permission to find that higher power, that divine presence. But here's the one criteria: it's got to be so full of love. And if we struggle with loving ourselves, to reach out to something beyond ourselves, that's why I like to talk about it with the context of beliefs, because it's really hard to just change your beliefs on your own. I've not been able to do that. To be able to know that there's a loving presence that is made me just the way I am, that loves me just the way I am, and is going to help me get out of my own way. And the way I refer to it is like, no, I get to join divine love in loving me. That's my big true belief. And as I listen to how people are talking and caring for themselves, it allows me to join them in self-love and saying, you get to love yourself. And if you're having too many blocks on it, that's okay. You get to reach out to something beyond yourself that has a loving presence that reminds you of your true identity and your true sense of self, that doesn't need all of these things that we say that we think we need in order to perform and to be loved and accepted in this world.
You're reminding me of a quote that I've heard recently by Father Gregory Boyle. He wrote Tattoos on the Heart, and he said, "Behold the one beholding you and smiling."
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yes. Behold the one beholding you and smiling. And just sitting in his presence it does take that beholding. It takes an act of choosing to focus on his loving gaze.
Yeah.
But then when you do that, the blessing of knowing that you're loved,
Yes.
every single human being. If you're a human being listening to this, you are loved by God because you're made in his image. He designed you. He cares about you.
Yeah.
He knows when you sit and when you stand. And every single day of your life was planned by him before it came to be. Psalm 139. And, that idea that he has a purpose for you, for your life, and that you're needed.
Mm-hmm.
That's been an important message to me, Heather. There was a time in my life when I was in high school when I was feeling sort of left out by the students in my class. And I was outside the classroom because I wasn't feeling accepted. And my teacher came up to me and she said, Kim, she said, they need you. They need you.
Mm.
And she saw something in me that she felt like I had to give. That changed my entire perspective. And all of a sudden I had this sense of purpose, like, oh, maybe I have something to give to them.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what the whole situation was about, but I just went back in and I started thinking, how can I serve these people? Like what purpose does God have for me in this situation? And it's a practice that I've developed over my life, and that I've learned also from different mentors that practice this. But before you go into a room, before you enter your work day, just to say, how can I serve other people today? And that sense of purpose really can help calm the parts of us that feel like there's no reason for us to show up, or like why do I even need to speak because no one needs to hear my voice today, or those self-critical messages.
Right.
Just going back to that inner self-talk.
Yeah. And the self-criticalness is not at all from divine love.
No.
That's the thing that really hit me, is I had to redefine what God meant to me and what my faith meant to me. I had to own it. And the way I really owned it is I literally kind of created this filter system. It's to be loving. There's no critique on it. There's no judgment on it. There's no condemnation on it. There's no guilt. There's no shame. These were things I was steeped in that were contributing to my inner critic.
Wow.
And it was something that I had just been used to. And I realized I've outgrown this, but I've got some work to do. It's hard if you grew up in that kind of mentality and thinking, and then realizing I don't want this anymore. And I get to figure out not just how to love myself, because I feel like that is overwhelming, but I get to join a force bigger than myself in loving me. That to me feels like I feel myself just go, this isn't all on me,
Wow. That's a beautiful concept. I get to join a force bigger than myself in loving me.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's constantly out there loving me.
That's a beautiful, yes. And it's not just some sort of a impersonal force, but it's someone who has feelings and thoughts and chooses to say, I love you. Like, you're the one that I want to be with all the time. And that's an amazing thing about God's Holy Spirit, is that you always feel loved. Whenever I say, okay, Lord, I'm feeling really disconnected from you. I just really want to hear your voice right now. And I pause and I just listen and I just say, Lord, please speak to me. 9 times out of 10, the answer is just, I love you. And that's all. That's what I needed to hear more than anything else,
Yeah.
And sometimes, no, Lord, I really need an answer to this question, but and then that'll come too. But usually what it is I need to hear him say, I love you. And because he knows that's the most important thing. And he does speak that over and over again. So if you're not hearing that voice, then it's not of him. Right.
Right. And I think, and I've done many retreats on this idea of hearing that voice, because there's so many barriers and blocks that we hold around with all of us. And honestly, it was the work I did in studying the right side of the brain. So I started moving into so much art with everybody who came to my retreats, because it lowered all the defenses. We could actually start hearing a loving presence. And it was so powerful to watch people begin to believe that they were loved, that they were cared for, that they mattered, that they held value. And then, of course, you can see once they begin to believe that, if we move over into the essence of leadership, they were such better leaders. They loved their people better. They cared for their people better. Serving their people came from an authenticity because they were also serving themselves. And I think that was a standard that I began to really hold on to, saying, if I'm starting to feel irritated or grumpy at people, it's probably because something's going on inside of me. And
Oh, good.
to
Yeah.
hold that value and really hold myself accountable to say, no, every single human is divinely created and holds the imago Dei within them, the image of God in Latin. And if I can't acknowledge that and honor that, I am no longer participating with divine love. Then what am I participating with? Something that I don't want to participate with.
Oh, yeah.
Or critic or darkness or evil, whatever out there. And I
Yeah.
just realized holding ourselves accountable to that is probably the highest standard in our leadership, to be able to step in that space and say, we get to join divinity, any kind of divine love that transcends our own ability to do it, in loving everybody else. And in there, we will lead from a space of true servanthood, true caring for each other. And it becomes less about the results and more about the human in front of us who is capable of getting the results.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've heard the phrase hurt people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a kind of a corollary phrase, which is, healed people heal people.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. When you've experienced that healing presence of love
Yeah.
for yourself, then you exude it to others and you become a more healing presence. So that taking in that voice of love, that inner voice of love, is a way to become a more loving person for other people.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we do that by really remaining in that place of God's presence, remaining in the spirit. And this is this very spiritual concept, and it's beyond words.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's difficult to define.
Yeah.
But it's a constant posture
Mm-hmm.
of attunement to sacred presence of love around us, and also attunement to our own inner systems,
Mm-hmm.
and attunement to other people that doesn't bypass. There's so much trauma in the world right now. There's so much suffering, and it's so important not to seek quick fixes, and to just bypass what people are experiencing and feeling all around us, and what we're feeling and experiencing, but be attuned in a way that welcomes all the different thoughts and feelings and emotions, and extends that spirit of compassion.
Well said. Another example is coming to my mind. I was working with this leader, and he had a notorious reputation for kind of being harsh, for being condescending, for being hard on his people. And fortunately, he was able to trust me, and we were able to kind of talk about it. And I said, well, can you tell me how you treat yourself when you have to start your day? He literally said, I take myself by the scruff of my neck and I slam myself in my chair and said, get the F done. Yeah. And I go, might that be leaking over your people? And even as we kind of both started laughing, he's like, yeah. And I don't mean to disrespect a sacred place, but it was this awareness that as soon as he began to talk about how he treated himself, he began to see the correlation. I said, how's that working for you? He goes, I am so tired, Heather. I am so exhausted. I said, can we try something different? Try just saying to yourself, I care about you. It's time for us to get some work done. And you're going to work until you're tired. And then when you're tired, you get to take a break. We literally had to change the way he treated himself. That was the main thing we worked on.
Wow.
I didn't have to work then on the external work.
Yeah.
He began to then make the transfer going, oh my gosh, I got to treat them kind. And I'm realizing it's coming from the place I'm not treating myself kindly. And we all come to the end of ourselves at some point in our life. And that's where, fortunately, he'd come to the end of himself, and he was meeting with me, and he's like, I'm just exhausted. I'm fried. And I know this is not the right way to do it. I'm not getting the results I want. And I really hate my work, hate my job, hate my life. I said, I could see why. And so it was just a sacred conversation where he shifted his whole paradigm, and it was powerful. it all started with him learning to love himself, and his people benefited from that then.
Thank heavens he had you to work through that with him. It sounds to me like he had what you might call a manager part of him that was on overdrive.
Yeah.
So just to explain this model a little bit further of internal family systems, these parts of it can be categorized into manager parts, which are the parts that are really trying to be productive. And they're also trying to prevent pain from happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
And there are these firefighter parts, we say, that are reactive and putting out the flames of emotion. So he probably had some reactive firefighters too that were putting out the emotions of the effects of his manager parts, right? And then, like we all do. And then some exile parts that are the more vulnerable parts, the younger parts of us underneath. So if he were to map out his own internal system on a piece of paper and really get to know that manager part, it'd be so helpful just to ask him, what is that manager part trying to do for you, for your internal system? Is there another part that part is protecting?
Yeah.
And most likely, if he were to take time to listen internally, there would be a younger part that felt he wasn't enough, or he wasn't performing well enough when he was a child, and somebody gave him that or he picked up that message somehow, and developed this manager part that felt like it had to be, the way that he was in order to be productive.
Exactly right. Yeah. So, and it also kind of at the deepest core level kind of came out that he didn't deserve to be loved. So I think it was just, I didn't do a lot because it really is more counselor territory.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel equipped to really enter in that, but I was like, this is so overt. I can't not say anything about this.
You don't need a degree to see that, right?
I didn't need a degree in psychology to see what was going on. And also it really came from my own work, and to be able to just give them an alternative. Have you thought about being kind to yourself? That was like a whole new idea.
Yes, that's a great question. Just a great question also is would you be willing to be just a little bit curious toward this part of yourself?
Yes.
Sometimes it's too hard to be compassionate right away. But that question, would you be willing to even experiment with trying to be just a little bit curious toward this part of yourself? Most people are willing to say yes to that one. Mm-hmm. And if they develop that curiosity, there's a shift internally. And then to ask, okay, now how am I feeling toward this part of myself?
Yeah.
And that shifts you into realizing you have a relationship with that part.
Yeah.
And then again, most likely at that point, if you ask how they're feeling, some kind of C quality will emerge from their sacred center.
Oh, I love that term, sacred center. It's so beautiful. And that's the work that I feel like that's where our clarity, our confidence, courage lives, is everyone's sacred center. So as I coach people, I don't think I go as deep as you do, Kimberly, but I'm so grateful for the knowledge I've had and some of the work that you've done around this that has influenced me, because it's helped make me a better coach to say, there's other options here.
Yes.
Stay curious. You can stay kind. You can ask, why are you being so hard on yourself? And where does this come from? And another question I ask is, well, where does this feel familiar?
Mm.
And that's usually they'll link it to another hard experience in their life, or even a childhood experience.
Yeah.
And to be able to let them own that and recognize they have the power to heal from that. That's, again, a whole nother concept where they've spent too much energy just trying to stuff it down. Right.
Well, the question of, is there another more helpful strategy to help this part achieve the same goal? Can be a good one. This part has a goal. This part has a goal to be effective. Is there another way that this part could be effective for you?
Yeah.
And that helps the parts to feel like they're not just, relinquishing their job, and they're not failing you, but they're being more effective. And they might have not even known that their strategies weren't effective. So you might need to let them know, update them. Actually, that's hurting the whole system because of the negative effects of the way I talk to people.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And then what's a more helpful strategy? Maybe becoming an encourager, advisor. And then I love that piece you brought in about what is it linked to? A good question might be, what's another time in your life when you felt this way? Is there an earlier memory? In fact, what's the earliest time in your life you can remember feeling this way?
Mm.
And then it's amazing the memories that come up for people that they hadn't thought about for years. And they realize that part of me is
Yeah.
carrying that memory. And I mean, the good thing is there's an invitation from God to give him our burdens. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And the rest that comes with that invitation. That as we release our painful beliefs, feelings, memories to him, that he will give us rest in return. And those of us are so tired from working so hard in whatever role I had, whether it's carrying that painful memory, whether it's being that strict manager part, whether it's trying to check out through that firefighter behavior, which can be anything from, over exercising to binging on substances, anything. All those parts are working so hard. And when they realize that they have a place where they can rest, which is in God's presence and in the presence of your spirit-led self, then they can just find a sense of peace that they never knew before.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, as we wrap up, I want you to leave some encouragement to our listeners. And I really loved your term, the sacred self. Is that what you call it, sacred self or sacred center?
Sacred center was what I said. Yeah.
Thanks, the sacred center, which I also call the true self and our authentic self. But I love that thought of the sacred center. What's some encouragement you want to give our listeners to honor that sacred center?
I want to encourage all your listeners to keep listening to you.
Thank you.
I truly, Heather, like when I just heard your voice this morning, just started talking to you, I just started to feel just that sacred center emerge, from behind the clouds, the parts that cloud over my sacred center. And I just thank you. And I think that when we put ourselves around people that have a lot of that sense of sacred self, sacred center within them, it's contagious and it brings that out in us because we feel the compassion exuding from them.
Yes.
So I encourage your listeners to put themselves around people that exude that compassion and to find those practices that really cultivate that core self within your soul. What is it for you that helps you to be living and leading your own life from a place of centeredness? And it may be being in nature. It may be spending time listening to worship music or classical music, or it may be doing artwork or whatever it is that you love to do that helps you really come alive. And to do that every day, spend time listening to the messages of love from within your heart that God has given you and that God speaks to you through your heart. Then extend that compassion to any parts of you that are needing your attention, just like you would to a child. And then as you leave those places of spiritual discipline, then you'll be a more healing presence in the world around you just automatically.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think parenting really shifted my whole paradigm. I didn't want any of this to come into my creating a barrier or added stress to my daughter and my son. And what a gift, though, to be able to join with divine love that says, not only are you enough, but I made you for a greatness that's beyond anything you could ever imagine. Let's go. Let's go. And to be able to lean into that and see my life as a beautiful opportunity to just go for it. And that's what I want to leave with my kids. And I think that's also what I want to leave with my clients. Like you don't even have a capacity. There's no lid on your potential. If you want it, you can go for it as big as you want. And if there's any beliefs that are stopping you, let's tackle them. Let's go after them. And at the same hand, I respect everybody's pacing. There's times when I'm like, I don't want to touch that belief. Just give me some time. I'd rather go eat a brownie to deal with this. And I respect that too, because I'm like, we're all just trying to to do the best we can. And I'll say, I understand. We'll take a break now, but you let me know when you're ready to return to that, because we both know that this one's limiting you. And they'll be like, yeah, I get it, Heather, I get it, but I just need a break. I'm like, I get it. I totally get it. So I think just that commitment that you and I both have to humanity to honor the pacing of their journey, to honor their sacred centeredness, and to support them in honoring themselves. That's what I get really excited about in the work that you're doing, and really the work that I'm doing.
Well, I just want to validate, Heather, that it's a great way to cultivate your sacred center to eat a brownie.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Brownies are valid techniques. So
one of my favorites. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me today, Kimberly. It's always so fun. I always know we're going to go deep. We're both such deep thinkers. And
thank you for getting to be on your podcast again. What a blessing. It's just a joy. And I just enjoy every chance I get to be around you, Heather.
Oh, you as well, Kimberly, you as well. Thanks for just spending time with me today and spending time with my audience. They're amazing people, and I think they're going to get a lot out of this conversation.
I know they are.
All right. We're cheering you on, everyone. Thanks so much for listening in. It was a great conversation, wasn't it? Wow. Check the show notes for any additional resources, also maybe where to find our guests. And if you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review. It sure helps us out. Thanks so much. We are always cheering you on.